The first question is, do you think big five contradictions exist? I don't think big five contradictions necessarily exist because it's a system that is very behaviorally focused, and in other systems that aren't necessarily just focused on behavior, it's very, very hard to kind of transfer that. And because big five is a very fluid system, it can change. It's not as rigid as other systems are. I feel like there's no need for there to be contradictions in it. And also, the way that your big five type manifests can be very, very different in everyone, because the setup of the system is quite different to other systems. Instead of like you fitting necessarily into a box, in a sense, it's more like a spectrum when you look at it. Like, it's like, where do you fall in terms of these different aspects on like a spectrum of behavior? Whereas in other systems, it's like you're kind of in a box of a specific type. So I feel like it's very, very hard to transfer that into like big five and say that there are specific contradictions. But I also think that, stuff like Enneagram, PY is obviously behavioral in some sense. So for some types, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to be a certain big five type, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Because of how the system is set, it can vary for literally anyone. So, next one is, what are your favorite and least favorite Enneagram subtypes and why? Honestly, like, I feel like in theory, Enneagram 1 is my favorite Enneagram type. Like, I like how they're written on paper, and like on paper, I would love an Enneagram 1. Like, that is perfect to me. But like, honestly, every time I meet an E1 in real life, we don't get on, especially social ones. Like, me and social ones do not get on. But in theory, I really love them. Just like, stay in theory, don't come to me in real life, in theory. But so, like, in real life, my favorite Enneagram type is probably Enneagram 5. Not just because I'm an Enneagram 5, but I feel like I tend to really get on with Enneagram 5s because I can relate to them a lot. And like, I feel like they're the kind of people that never like overstep my boundaries. They're never like too invasive. And like, I feel like that's the same for them from me. So I feel like I'm often very close with Enneagram 5s, and it's just nice because I feel like I have a lot of like, not low tension friendships, but low tension friendships. And I also get on very, very well with self-preservation 9s for the same reason. Yeah. And my least favorite types would have to be sexual 2 or sexual 4, because I feel like they're just very, very abrasive. Like, to me, it's too much. Like, I can't deal with like loud, outspoken types. And the thing is, I love sexual 4 characters. Like, those are my favorite characters in like any media. But in real life, they're just too much for me and I can't do it. Third question is, how valid do you think vibe typing is? I don't think like vibe typing is completely accurate when it comes to typing characters, but I do think like vibe typing can be used to like narrow down how you want to type a character, because realistically, with things like Enneagram, the character's behavior is going to reflect their motivations in some way. Like, you're not going to look at like an E6 character and, mistake them for like an E8 character unless it's like sexual 6. But like, if you see like a social 6 character, you're not going to vibe type them sexual 8, because their behavior is not going to be typically one of a sexual 8. So vibe typing can be used to narrow down, but just vibe typing and not looking at motivations of the character, stuff like that, that's not good and it's not useful in any way. But it can be useful in typing, just not necessarily valid on its own. My main videos planned for the future is obviously going to be like continuation of my subtype comparison series. The next video that I have is SP1 versus SP4. Then I'm also working on a Lestat de Lyon core from the 2022 series, typology analysis, and I'm going to do a social 5 and intellectualism video, and I'm also going to do the same for sexual 5. And I want to also start talking about my thoughts on other pieces of media outside of typology. So one that I was going to make a video on is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and it's going to be about both the book and the movie. And I'm probably going to do more stuff on like media analysis as well, not just typology. And I'm probably going to do a video typing Interview with the Vampire Characters as a whole, but I want to do one focusing on the Start de Leon core, or I might do individual videos for all the characters. I don't think I have any really controversial typings, or none that I can actually think of right now, but as a whole, typings that I do get a lot of people being like arguing with me on is my Interview with the Vampire typings, but I don't think they're necessarily controversial. A lot of people don't agree with me typing the Start sexual 2, Claudia sexual 4, and Louis sexual 9. I feel like a lot of people just have very differing opinions, but I am making arguments on all those individual character typings, so I'm not going to go into detail right now about why I type the characters that way, but those are probably my most controversial typings, even though they're not that controversial. Okay, I originally got into typology around 2019, where I learned what MBTI and Enneagram were. I wasn't like really into it, but like I understood the basics, and I typed myself INTP SP5 then. And then maybe for like a year or so, I wasn't into typology at all. Like I kind of just forgot about it, wasn't like thinking about it. And then my friend encouraged me to like get back into the community, and then I started posting like a few typology related things, but maybe like 2 years later is when I started like an actual typology dedicated account. And then I've just been doing that since, and yeah. But originally I only knew MBTI and Enneagram, and it was that way for a long time. It took me a long time to like branch out into other systems, but like Enneagram has always been a system that I've really liked ever since I first got into typology. So my dad is LSI Social 613 LFBE, and my mum is ILE SP792 FLVE. It's actually such a mouthful, like saying typology out loud, but like I feel like with my parents, I'm like very in the middle of their personalities and everything. Like I'm very much a mix of how both of my parents are, and like I feel like Self-Preservation 5 itself is quite a mix of Social 6 and Self-Preservation 7, but like my parents, like I'm just very much a product of my parents, and you can tell. My sister is SEE Self-Preservation 8 VFEL, and like I feel like with me and my sister, we're very similar in how we think and process things, but my sister is very like outspoken and like very forward about what she wants and how to get it, whereas I don't really go after what I want, and if I do, I'm very like thoughtful and I take thought before I act, whereas my sister doesn't. And I feel like that's where the main differences in us lie. We're very similar, but extremely different at the same time. I feel like it's very obvious. Like my favorite system is Enneagram. It's the focus of this account. It's the focus of my TikTok. But like apart from Enneagram, I think my second favorite is probably PY, which a lot of people don't like. I think there are a lot of issues in it, but I just find it, I particularly like it when typing people, when typing characters. I find it useful, and even though I think there are a lot of flaws in it, I just find it interesting. Then I like Big Five because it's quite a simple and easy to understand system, and like it's very applicable everywhere. And then I think Jungian and Socionics are like on the same level to me. I do think that they're very good systems. However, I find it very hard to learn and keep up with. Like I feel like I constantly have to refresh my knowledge on them. It's hard for me to remember everything about them, and I don't really use the systems that much in comparison to Enneagram and PY. It's just a lot harder for me to wrap my head around, and I just don't like using it for typing. I don't think that they're necessarily bad systems. I think because they're so complex in a way that's difficult for me to understand, I just don't really like them as much. But I don't think they're bad systems. This is a very, very difficult question to answer. I feel like it can be used and it's intended to be used to help people move on from like mental stress, trauma, things that have happened in their childhood that might impact their adult life. However, it's very, very dependent on the person and the effort that they are willing to put in for that. I think the real way it can be used is more of like an understanding why you act the way you act, but then that can be like a very, very bad path to go down because it might just become you excusing your behaviors, you excusing the negative impact of your trauma just because now you have an explanation for it. And also, typology doesn't always do that. Typology isn't always accurate with how trauma affects you. At the end of the day, it is pseudoscientific and it's not going to be accurate in everything. And I feel like putting trust just in something like typology for stuff like trauma, mental health issues and everything can be more unhealthy if you let it get that bad and get to a point where it actually impairs the way that you view yourself rather than brings a more positive light to it. But in an ideal world, yes, it can. And I think it would be really, really good if typology could be used for self-help. But so, of course, I have to include my number one typology on both YouTube and TikTok, number one favorite account. But there are loads and loads of other accounts that I really, really do like, and I'll put them in the next few slides. Honestly, go and look at all of these accounts. They're so informative. The layout, the presentation is so, so, so good. And I would genuinely recommend all of these accounts, and I love them so much. I'm definitely considering doing videos on PY, and I have been looking into making videos about Ikazo's Enneagram. However, I haven't fully learnt the system yet, therefore I don't know if I will be making videos about it in the near future, just because I still need to learn the system fully to be able to make videos and teach people about the system. But definitely I will be branching out to other systems soon. My main focus is just on Enneagram, and there's so, so, so much you can say about Enneagram that I feel like right now I don't really need to branch out into other systems, but I will be making videos on systems such as PY definitely, and probably Big Five, to like appeal to a wider range of people. I've not really had any mistypes that were that horrendous because I've only ever had one mistype, and that mistype was Social 5 VLEF. And I think the most horrendous part about that was me genuinely believing that I was 1V when I'm like the most 4V person ever. That's like the only mistype I've had, but 1V for me is a little bit crazy. But like I've considered other types. I've considered self-preservation 9 and E4 before, but I've never actually typed as those types. So I'd probably say if I'd ever typed E4, that would be my most horrendous mistype, but I never have. Not yet. Hopefully never. But yeah, I've only ever mistyped as Social 5. So thank you for watching, and I'm definitely going to do more Q&A videos in the future, so you can leave questions under this video, my other videos if you want them in a Q&A, or you can leave them on my Instagram or my TikTok. I feel like Q&A videos are really good for me right now because I'm just doing uni work and uni work and uni work, so it's a lot easier for me to make Q&A videos than like longer videos where I have to read like a whole Enneagram book just to make the video. So I'll definitely be doing more Q&As in the future, and it's nice. You can also ask me like non-typology related questions as long as they aren't too personal, and I will answer them.